Joining me now is Senator John Boozman from Washington, D.C. Senator, as always, good to visit with you. Let's talk about the big story of the week right now. That is President Donald Trump firing FBI Director James Comey. You said in a statement midweek that you want to see a full explanation as to the circumstances. Twofold. Tell me how quickly you want to see that explanation, a day or two or next month, whenever that is, and how's an explanation going to change your position on that firing?
No, I'm a transparency guy. I think that the sooner the better. When you look at Director Comey's record in the sense of keeping us safe, he's done a tremendous job there. We can be very, very proud of that. The world is full of threats, and a lot of those are focused right here on the United States. That's been their job, and again, the agency with all of the men and women working so hard at the FBI, they've done a tremendous job. I think that probably Director Comey had become a distraction. It depended on what day of the week it was, what week it was, in the sense of Republicans attacking him because he wasn't doing enough on this or that investigation, Democrats attacking him the same way. I think that was the crux of it. But I really would like to hear the President, I'd like to hear his people, Department of Defense, come out and explain exactly why it was done so suddenly, what was in the report that was prepared for the President, and then kind of go from there. The next step also is very quickly getting somebody in that we all agree is a person beyond reproach, somebody that Democrats, Republicans, most importantly the people of the country can get behind, is heading the FBI, this very, very important agency.
Senator, could you see something in that explanation that comes out of why he was fired so suddenly? Would that change your mind as to whether or not there should be an independent investigator, an independent investigative committee, an independent counsel of some sort following up with this Russian investigation?
Well, I think right now there's evidence that the FBI certainly is investigating. They're going forward. Again, getting a replacement for Secretary or Director Comey is important in that regard. So that's an ongoing process that I think is, that they're doing a good job. I've got all the confidence in the world in Richard Burr, Senator Warner from Virginia. They're working very, very hard. What I'd like to do is see the outcome there, and then we'll go, from there, depending on the circumstances. But I don't think anybody has said that there's any politics playing there. Senator Burr was pretty strong on his statement, again, wanting to know exactly what went on with the Comey firing. So I think that's the route to go for right now, and then we'll see what happens.
But you're open to an independent investigation at some point in time, particularly if you see this following along partisan political lines. Would you be open to an independent investigation if it appeared to you that this was becoming highly partisan, which quite frankly I feel like it already has?
Yeah. Well, we're a nation of laws, and so again, I'm a guy that believes in transparency. I believe in doing the right thing. Right now, I'm content that the Intelligence Committee that is chaired by Senator Burr is doing the right thing. I think they're working very hard to get to the truth. Certainly, there's a lot of partisan politics involved, but not with the investigation that they're doing. So right now, I'm content. Certainly, if circumstances change, I'll be constantly, weighing what we need to be doing. But right now, I think that we're in a good position.
Last question on this topic here, but just in a little bit more general terms, in terms of how the Republican Congress has, in many people's eyes, circled the wagons around a Republican president to protect him from, a lot of these controversial issues, not just Russia, but some of the other things that are going on in the government as well. Do you see how people have come to the conclusion that Republicans are putting party over country? Do you see how they can come to that kind of conclusion, and what would you say to those folks?
Well, I'd say that really, when you look at it honestly, there's all kinds of partisan politics going on. It wasn't very long ago at all that the Democrats were screaming the loudest that they wanted to get rid of Director Comey. He was terrible, this and that. The litany was great. Now it's just the opposite. This is this wonderful person. How could you get rid of him? Certainly the President has the authority to do it. Myself, several others have said, look, again, let's let's talk to the American public about why it was done, why it needed to be done, why it had become a distraction. But I think there's lots of politics being played on both sides. And you know, at the end of the day, what I have to do is just weigh, you know, where we're at, what's correct. But I do think that the president was within his bounds. And so far, when you look at the Russian investigation and all of that, there hasn't been any evidence that President Trump has been involved. I think that's something that pretty much everybody agrees with.
To your point about Democrats screaming for James Comey's resignation or to be fired, I mean, at this point in time, though, they've actually been calling for an independent counsel. They weren't necessarily calling for him to be fired per se. So, again, just kind of back to my question, I'm not sure I heard an answer on this. Do you see how people could come to the conclusion that Republicans are putting party over country?
I think it depends on where you're at to begin with when you look at what's going on. But before this, there were many Democrats that were calling for Director Comey to step down. Now, because the fact that the president's fired him, then the Democrats have completely changed. So, and you had some of the other side. There were other people that were on the Republican side that were upset with him because he wasn't pursuing the leaks like they'd like for him to see. He pursued the HUMA situation, not following up on it like they'd like to see him be more aggressive. So the decks have been cleared. We need to get somebody in place that everyone has confidence in, and then we can go forward.
It seems like with all that partisanship you just outlined, though, that person that would have integrity and people would be feeling would be more in control of a situation would be somebody independent and nonpartisan. Yet I'm hearing you say you're comfortable with the Republican-controlled Senate Intelligence
Not necessarily.
Committee.
The Justice Department would be the one that appointed that individual, so that's not necessarily true. And I'm sure if the investigation went the way the Democrats felt like it should go, then they would be singing his praises. If it didn't go the way they wanted it to go, then they would be very, very negative about and claim that the Justice Department had selected somebody that was not the person that should be in place. So right now, I'm very content with Richard Burr, Senator Warner doing the job. Let's back off. Let's see what they come up with, and then go from there.
All right, let's turn our attentions to flooding in Arkansas. You've seen some of the ravaged parts of the state, particularly up in northeast Arkansas, that seems to be hit the hardest, particularly the agriculture community up there. What do you see happening in terms of federal response there, and what's going to make those communities whole again? Are they ever going to be whole again?
Well, Roby, it's really difficult. It's such a sad situation, and you have areas where people were flooded out literally not too long ago, have rebuilt. Now they're flooded out again. You have farmers that have had these 500-year floods that we seem to have every 2 or 3, 4 years now. So it's really been very, very difficult for them. So you have the farm families that we had the Secretary of Ag come out, flew over, had a great briefing. Congressman Crawford, nobody's more knowledgeable about farm policy than he. I got to ride back, hitched a ride to Washington with the Secretary. He was very impressed with getting to see it firsthand. So he's working on that, and then we've got the FEMA component to help people also, and so we're getting them involved. They are very involved right now. I'm going to be back in the area this weekend, survey more damage on the ground. So we're looking forward to that. But the bottom line is the delegation, the governor, everybody involved is committed to try and mobilize as many resources as we can to help these people in this, in some cases, very desperate situation.
With all of the storms and the more recent activity that we've seen that you just alluded to, does that suggest we should take more action on climate change, which many people will point to scientifically, in particular, say that this is something man-made? Should we do a little bit more than that? Right now, you got the president talking about pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. Should we be doing more on the climate change front?
Sure. Well, the problem there is how much is being made by man, and can you do enough? If you agree with that to a certain amount, I don't know that anybody's really agreed the extent that man is doing it. I know that right now the Chinese, the Indians they verbally agree, but they're not doing anything. And so if we go forward unilaterally, we'll be in a situation where we'll have significant increases in our utility prices. What does that do to single moms? What does it do to people on fixed incomes? All of those kind of things. Our manufacturers that are competing with the Chinese and the Indians as far as selling their products. So it's complicated. Certainly we need to be in a position to be able to respond, but we do need to have the dollars that FEMA needs to support and perhaps to do more for agriculture. I think that's the way you remedy it. If not, then you're in a situation where it's all pain and no gain for the United States.
Lastly here, healthcare, you've got the House GOP, the GOP in the House has passed a healthcare bill. They've sent it to the Senate where it looks like the Senate's going to start over on that measure. What do you think of the House GOP plan? Did you support it? And secondly, what do you think is the time frame for the Senate doing something on health care?
No, I think the House bill is a good template to begin work on. The Senate bill will look very, very different, though, once it's done. And, people grab me and say, John, we've got to do something. We've got these skyrocketing increases in premiums. Last year, 11 states had increases in health insurance premiums of 40% or more. Arkansas is probably looking at a 20 to 25% increase this year. Tremendous pressure last year to keep the rates down because of the election. So you simply can't do that. You can't have these tremendous the high premiums with $5,000, $10,000 deductibles and then have to pay 20%, have an 80-20 match after that.
How quickly does the Senate move on health care? When will we see a final Senate bill?
We as a conference have lunch 3 days a week, and so this has been the topic of conversation every day. So it's not just doing something, it's doing something right. It's 18% of the economy. It protects all of it affects all of us, and so it is important. So we're doing it as quickly as possible. One of the major things that we're waiting for right now, Roby, is the congressional budget score. They have to score what the House has done, so we'll better understand and then start filling in the blanks that we need to most importantly, and this is so very important no matter where you're at, is affordability. Right now there's nothing in the Affordable Care Act to keep costs down. We simply have to start controlling cost.
All right, Senator John Boozman, thank you for your time. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much as always for having me. Appreciate being on.